Persia, it was another country that King Cyrus, he was the king of Persia. He was very powerful and had lots of land that he had taken over. And Babylon was strong, and they tried to conquer against Persia many lands. But they could not take Persia. They could not. And now Persia, they wanted their people to be at peace. And they told the Israelites they could go back to their homeland. And that happened after King Cyrus made an announcement in 538 BC. Now in the first year of Cyrus king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus king of Persia, so that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and also put it in writing. Thus says Cyrus king of Persia, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Whoever is among you of all his people, may the Lord his God be with him. Let him go up. The people of Israel, they wanted to come back to God. They wanted to. They wanted to be restored to him. And the people, like they were before in that relationship, but it didn't start out well. Why? Because there were problems. The people started to repent, but then they stopped and they went as straight as sin. And God sent a prophet. He sent Nehemiah to them to encourage the people to come and to build the temple and to prepare them to come for the Messiah, the coming Messiah. The Messiah is the person who would be sent to earth. Now this week we're going to be studying about the Old Testament prophet Nehemiah. Table Talk, a devotional magazine. And he's talking about the Old Testament prophet Nehemiah in his book and how this applies to us today. And how does it apply? Well, the reason is there are different places in the United States where there is a lot of uprising about, really, it's a cultural war. And it's been going on for 50 years where persons oppose each other on different things, moral issues. There are a number of people out there who oppose abortion. The reason is because they believe that the sanctity of life is important to God, while there's others who decide that abortion is okay. And there's other issues. What? Well, gay marriage. Some people think, well, there's nothing wrong with it. But other people say, no, marriage is between a man and a woman only. That debate was started with the sexual revolution back in 1960. Before 1960, people, they felt ashamed. They felt ashamed about promiscuity. Having sex outside of marriage. They believed that sex was to be between a man and a woman and nowhere else. But since 1960, everything started to change. Before that, people generally believed that the details of moral life was according to the biblical ethic. But after that, people started believing that no, that it was okay to become more and more in disregard for the Bible and the biblical ethic. Nehemiah, he was a Jewish slave who served King Cyrus of Persia. The situation that was there in Persia was almost the same as the United States. He felt like he'd lost the traditions of Jerusalem. Jerusalem had been destroyed. Everything had been collapsed. And the people of Israel, they felt lowly. The people of the nation of Persia looked down on them like they were not important. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah. Now it happened in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, as I was in Susa, the citadel, that Hanani, one of my brothers, came with certain men from Judah, and I asked them concerning the Jews who escaped, who had survived the exile, and concerning Jerusalem. And they said to me, the remnant there in the province who had survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates are destroyed by fire. As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days, and I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven. Nehemiah, He had to learn how to be faithful to the Lord while under the king of Persia there. The king of Persia didn't know the Lord, and Nehemiah had to learn how to keep the Jewish traditions holy and alive in that country and to honor God. Same thing happens today in our culture where things are counterculture and contradict. Application. You know, in the United States, we have this culture war with American Christians. They either believe one of two things, two extremes. And one is that they go too far. They go too far. They say we can have influence on society. And the other is another extreme that they believe that, you know, the country is completely going downhill and just forget about it. Or vote in someone politically and pass the laws. And then that's it. The more biblical way is what? Well, Christians need to serve the community, all people. All people, publicly and privately. It's important that they tell the message of the gospel. Why the gospel? Why not just moralism? You know, teaching what's right and teaching what's wrong. Why not? Well, because that does not save the soul. The gospel saves the soul. If the gospel spreads, it will. You might be surprised, but Jonathan Edwards, who is he? Well, he's a very famous preacher from long ago in the 1700s. He and his wife Sarah, together, they had 11 children, 3 boys and 8 girls. And they homeschooled their children. And mostly it was Sarah while her husband was away preaching. This was during the Great Awakening, the revival. And he was out ministering. And Sarah stayed and taught the children most of the time. And the children, they grew up understanding the gospel clearly. Altogether, the descendants, the children, how many? 67 grandchildren. Someone did the research recently, and they found out that there was a little over 400 descendants. And they're out of these 414 were college presidents. About 100 became professors. And there was about 100 who were ministers. About 100 were lawyers or judges, and there was less than 60 that were doctors. And there was many who were writers and authors or editors. It's very important that the gospel be spread to the community through the teaching of our children and through the generations to our grandchildren. So the gospel